Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 8 of Coffee with Centuro. So I'm joined again, as usual, by Ben and Siraj.
Right.
So ready for an exciting discussion today, guys?
Take it away.
I'm going to start with a question. So, what do you guys think Robert Downey Jr., Mark Cuban, Sierra, and the CEO of Uber have in common?
Besides a bank balance bigger than mine, you mean?
Yeah.
Technically correct. Yeah.
They are all Gemini.
Missouri.
Yes.
They've all just invested in toilet paper. And they're doing this to save the environment. So there's a company called Cloud Paper, and they're trying to get people to switch to bamboo-based toilet paper. So I don't know if you know this, but apparently 15% of deforestation is all due to toilet paper production. So in the US alone, 40,000 trees are cut down a year so people can wipe their...
Yeah.
So
now we're talking really, now.
So apparently, if the average household bought bamboo-based toilet paper, each house would save around 250 trees a year. So is this a worthwhile investment, or is it a flush? Is it money being flushed away?
Money being flushed away. I like that.
I wonder how annoyed those companies are going to get of all these sort of jokes.
Yeah.
I wonder what the price difference is, what the premium is, if there is one, because that's normally always the difference between these sort of things being adopted, right? Is if I go to Sainsbury's and I see a 9-pack of normal toilet paper and I see a 9-pack of bamboo, what's going to change your average household is it the same price? Then you might get them on the consciousness of it, of like, I'll save the environment. But if it's £2 more expensive, your average household is going to save that £2.
The thing is, I think it's a good investment. It's one of those things that will always be needed. I mean, it's never going to go out of fashion, as in toilet paper in general, I don't think. And I've seen people make money out of the weirdest things. I think we have a tendency to think of sexy glitz and glam when it comes to investments. But, I know of a guy who got a contract to clean toilets. Public toilets. He got the contract, but he made tons of money just from that. And some people might go, I'm not going to be touching that, but the guy made a fortune out of it. Yeah, good investment.
I mean, if it's going to help save the environment, and it's a viable alternative, it's comfortable and soft, then I'm sure it will succeed. Okay, moving on. Back to the usual player that we always talk about, back to Facebook. So Facebook have now said they may quit Europe over a potential ban on sharing data with the US. So the Irish Data Protection Commissioner, they had a ruling in July that said that there's not enough safeguards against snooping by US intelligence agencies. So when Facebook share the data of European consumers with the US, it's going to cause a few issues. So this week, or last week by the time this episode goes out, Facebook have filed a lawsuit against the Irish Data Protection Commissioner saying they're being picked on, it's unfair bias. Why are no other big companies being targeted? And they're arguing that they need that data transfer in order to continue offering their services to European customers. And if they can't, then they may have to pull out of Europe, which means all of us, 410 million users in Europe, would lose access to Facebook and Instagram. So do you guys think they're being picked on again? Is it a case of, pick on Facebook, or is this a legitimate concern, the whole data sharing privacy?
I guess it does sound a little bit, but we're slightly used to it from our perspective as well. So some people might just go, nah, big billionaire company, doing one. But I think probably so. We even see in the tech hearings and so forth, it's always just the big guys because they're the easy targets, right? And easier for headlines, easier for people to say, yep, we've increased our data protection against Facebook because that's who the public will recognize and so forth. There's probably a lot of other companies out there using their data and transferring it to the US, but if you don't know that company's name, it won't sound like a win when you
But how is
put
this
those
different
blocks
to
up. Yeah.
TikTok? How is this different to America banning TikTok, and now it's Europe banning Facebook? Isn't it just tit for tat kind of thing?
They're not actually banning Facebook. They're saying you need to keep your data in Europe. So Facebook have an HQ in London, so they're saying you shouldn't be sending that data to the US. But Facebook's argument is we need to send it to the US operationally, and if we can't, then we'll quit. We'll have to quit Europe. So, do you think that's a threat? Are they threatening to quit Europe to say, "Oh, back off," because everyone needs Instagram and Facebook?
Yeah, it's a really weird one because we're getting into the point where companies are becoming global, and it's like, do they then have to literally set up operation in every country to be able to operate? Or because technology allows us to operate globally from one central point, yeah, it kind of then you're starting to look at forcing companies to put servers in every country to adhere to every law. I get it from the country's point of view because Ireland wants to be able to control their own data protection and so forth. Same way the US is banning TikTok. It's the same logic, just applied in a different way, I guess.
But it's also, thinking of what we do as a business, scale companies, we're helping people with immigration and all of that. It's one of those things we also need to constantly consider is where's your data being kept, dependent on which country you're moving to and from. And I think it's going to become more and more relevant as we go along.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Someone will have to create an option where you can put the data in space, basically. Where it's in no actual where it's in no actual country, but then the servers. So this is the problem. The servers are sitting somewhere physically, so even the cloud is physically somewhere.
Yeah.
And then do you have to then break the data up and have little bits of it on servers in every country to make it decentralized? That's where things like the blockchain are going to start coming in and allowing you to sort of show where the data is and spread it out. So you could have servers in the US, in Europe, and so forth, bits of the data spread over the whole network of servers, and then it becomes decentralized and no one country is in control of it. And that's where you then start going. But that'll be difficult. I reckon countries will kick up a fuss about stuff like that because that'll be taking control away from them, and then it'll be who controls the data, and people that have control don't like losing it. So.
Yes, valid point. So sticking on the topic of kind of governments or organizations getting involved with corporate affairs, LVMH, so the luxury goods brand that owns Louis Vuitton, Christian Dior, they've been in negotiations, or they've been in the midst of a deal to buy Tiffany, $16 billion. The deal was scheduled to close on the 24th of November, but LVMH have actually tried to back out of the deal this month. So just a few weeks ago, and there's a few reasons for this. So one could be COVID. So COVID's hit sales. Apparently, my Tiffany's around 77% below what they were selling last year, or something like that.
Wow.
But actually, LVMH have also said that the French government provided them with a letter saying they need to push this deal back till at least January. And a few anonymous sources from the Elysee have said, yep, Macron wanted that letter sent over. It's unverified, because there's a few tensions between the US and France in terms of trade. So the US have threatened to impose tariffs on French goods. So supposedly the French want to wait and see whether these tariffs come into play and then see how they react. So I don't know if it's convenient and LVMH like, sales are really low, let's rely on this trade thing to try and get out of it. Or if it's genuinely the French government saying, all right, can you slow down? We don't want to do business with the US.
Well, they don't want to do business with the Trump US. I think there are quite a few deals, and there's quite a few people going, let's just wait and see what happens in November. It's actually not so far away, and if Trump is out, then I think there's going to be a massive new flow of things. I think the world is tentatively sitting on the edge going, what will another 4 years of Trump do? And I could well imagine that France is that's their main reason. January is not just randomly chosen. January is chosen because Trump is out the door then.
Yeah, and it's just a bit of leverage, right? 16 billion into the economy, right? It's French buying a US company, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, in government terms, it's not massive, but it's not small either. So yeah, it's just
I wonder how much of this goes back to, I think it was 2 years ago where Macron and Trudeau were kind of jokingly laughing about Trump when he was right there, and it was caught on camera. I don't know if you remember that. Something like that could really be held as a as a little thing in the back of Trump's mind, since there's so much space back there. But I mean, so that it's kind of going, I'm going to get him back sometime.
Yeah, I think if they really wanted the sale to progress, the letter maybe wouldn't have been leaked. Like, they probably would have found a way to make it happen. So I'd say it's a helpful thing. But you're probably right. If sales are down 77%, you don't even know if they're going to bounce back up. And so what is the company's valuation now? How much has it changed since they originally valued it at 16 billion? And what's the potential projections for the next 5-10 years, which is often a big part of the value? Nobody knows. Even if we pop out of COVID and everything's fine in 6 months and we're back to normal, is retail space back to normal? Is retail shopping back to normal? Like, nobody knows. So it's probably also just helpful for them to go, we need to reevaluate this deal. What is the projected value of your retail stores now, of your sales for the next
on a
10
very
years?
very small basis? A friend of mine had a retail store here in Cape Town, and they sold it. They've been negotiating before COVID, and they sold it in February or March. Actually, it was right on COVID. And the new owner wanted to back out, and the lawyers actually said, sorry, there's actually a verbal agreement. There's a whole lot of stuff that's already been done. Even though it wasn't completely signed, they couldn't back out. It's a really horrible time to buy a retail store when you're then locked down for 6 months. But I think that they also couldn't, and that's one little store. They couldn't back out of it because there was actually a real agreement in place, a verbal agreement in place.
That's happening here as well. So Tiffany are arguing LVMH can't back out of this now. So they've filed a lawsuit against LVMH in the US. And they wanted it to happen in November because the sale date is the 24th of November. And interestingly, even though it's in the US courts have scheduled the trial for January. So kind of the French are going to win anyway through that.
Yeah. I suppose the same thing happened with WeWork and their investment, right? Zane, I guess from a legal side, when you're talking this big a deal, would you not be able to build in something that was like, if something crazy happens to your brand in the meantime, we have a break clause.
So you have a force majeure clause, which is a clause exactly for that. So if anything happens, if there's unforeseen circumstances, but then it's quite difficult to enforce, and obviously depends on the territory as well. So not every country will have the same rules or views over that clause. And a lot of people, when COVID happened, were saying, is COVID even covered by that? Because it's not specifically mentioned. So it's all about interpretation. It's all about the lawyers arguing. It's all about the loopholes. It's all about territory and case law.
The lawyers getting rich. Is that what it is?
I would have thought global pandemic would be a more obvious force majeure, because it's meant to be like completely unforeseen world circumstances is meant to be the thing, right? Rather than just like a little brand fluctuation. It's got to be.
Bill Gates predicted a virus a few years ago. So.
Yeah.
But just on very quickly on backing out of things, Qantas Airlines have just announced that they're backing out of their sponsorship of Australian cricket and rugby. And they've been sponsoring for 30 years. And just because they actually need to save money, they've backed out of their sponsorship. I mean, I think it's going to impact that COVID knock is going to filter all the way down.
Okay, so now I've got another question for both of you. We'll start with Ben. Same question.
Yeah.
Ben, who would you say is the greatest music artist of all time?
Oh, why do I feel like I've heard this before? Mariah Carey?
And this is up to you. This is not a fact. It's your opinion.
Okay. I was trying to calculate sales. I think I might have heard this one before, but she's got like a crazy Christmas albums always make a shitload of money that people don't expect.
Not in terms of money.
Are you just asking? Are you asking who we like? Is it? Yeah. I mean, Ben, we know it's Justin Bieber, right? Ben.
Yeah, of course. So Justin Timberlake. It's the other Justin.
Yeah. It's the other Justin. Okay. Yeah. They're both. Yeah. So Justin Timberlake.
No, over to you, Sarah.
I kind of going in different a different kind of route when it comes to who's my favorite artist. I'm so Pavarotti. How's that for a change?
Oof.
Pavarotti.
Yes.
Okay, interesting. Well, I would have said Michael Jackson. from a music perspective, not all the other stuff. But apparently, there's an artist who is considered, obviously it's an opinion based, but generally speaking, one of the greatest across the whole continent of Africa. And he has been described as bigger than Michael Jackson. Forbes Africa named him the most bankable artist in Africa in 2017. Every time he visits any country in Africa, he supposedly needs a huge security team because people just want to touch him. I don't know how that works with COVID now. But any guesses who that is?
No. Suraj, should you run out to
who would I run out to
touch when they come?
When they no one that springs to mind, I must admit. Share it, Zane. Tell us.
So it's Akon.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he is obviously a large music artist, but he's moved into kind of more entrepreneurial pursuits. So he bought a diamond mine in South Africa. I think that was in 2007. Then
he didn't
created
pay me what I really wanted, but okay. He didn't, he didn't pay me market value, but okay, he got the diamond mine. I'll let him take it. Yeah.
You should have sued him. You should have taken him to court. Then he created a solar power company. So he managed to provide electricity to 14 different African nations within the first year of launching.
Yeah. He raised $1 billion in funding for that solar company or something, some crazy number like that. But being Chinese, I remember that coming out. Yeah.
Interesting, Chinese money. And then more recently, Saraj and we met at a conference in Collision.
Yeah.
He was there. I don't know if you saw him.
I didn't watch his talk. I was
in the front row. But he announced his own cryptocurrency. So a coin, he's calling it, which is quite clever. And now, I mean, he did announce this a couple of years ago. He talked about it at Collision in Canada as well. But work has finally started on a new smart city in Senegal, which is going to be called Akon City. So apparently it's estimated to cost $6 billion to build. It's 2,000 acres. It'll include a luxury resort, condos, offices, hospital, sports stadiums, an artificial intelligence data center. And apparently they've got an architect from the UAE, and they've taken inspiration from, all of the cities in the world. So they want to have a coastline like Barcelona. They want to have a skyline like Dubai. They want to have a sports stadium like Madison Square Garden. And everything will be paid in the city through the cryptocurrency. So there's no other kind of cash payments or credit cards, etc. So you will use your Acoin to pay for everything: trains, transport, utilities, taxes, everything. And the plan is to also franchise the city, so then other Akon cities can pop up in other regions in Africa. It's almost like a Wakanda. So as an initial kind of opinion, what do you think of that as a concept?
I mean, I think building city precincts is not an unusual thing. So I think from a business perspective, to build such a modern city, and what Africa gives you is a bit of a blank canvas, because there are regions in Africa that is untouched. So you try and find a place in Europe where you can get that amount of space that is clean and you can build it properly from underground up. Whereas Africa, you can get those kind of things next to the coast. What do I need exactly? Find the right spot. I think that's great. What worries me a little bit is the Acoin thing. Why did that have to be a factor? Why does he have to have a little, because now, what defines being like a government more than, or a superpower than controlling the currency of a particular place?
But I think that's the point. He won't, because it's blockchain. The way it works, and I have I'd say surface level knowledge. I probably can't go further into how it controls and how they, or if they make money out of it. So they'll control an amount of coin, and then it'll get mined, and as the value goes up, they'll be able to sell more coin. But eventually they won't. So the same way that no one owns or is manipulating Bitcoin, it's an open market. So he won't. I don't think it'll be a case of Akon's company controls the money in this city. Once it's out and dispersed across the market, it'll be in decentralized form. There won't be a government to control it. The only problem is that
part of the point.
Blockchain coin is quite volatile. in terms of value. So, you know, we've seen it in Bitcoin where it goes from 4,000 to 10,000 back down to 6. So the only issue that creates is most people probably don't have the emotional or financial intelligence to maybe sit in a market where all of their money is fluctuating like that. So you need it to be quite stable for even just people's own mental security in knowing that, cool, if I get paid $1,000 for my job, that tomorrow that won't be worth 400, or it might be worth $2,000 tomorrow, but like not knowing. And then how do you go out and buy groceries when you got paid $1,000 and then the value of the coin dropped 40% in a day, and now you have 400 quid less, well, 408 coin less. That would be the interesting part to me, is how that works.
Yeah, I think that's the issue. So there's two kind of parts to what you just said there. So the first part, well, let's start with the fluctuation point. So with Bitcoin, people saw it as it became, cryptocurrencies are meant to be used as a currency, but then Bitcoin became almost an investment piece. People were like, oh, is everyone going to adopt this? Is it going to be revolutionary? Let's start buying it up. And then the value soared. And then, as Ben mentioned, all the fluctuations have happened. But there's actually 1,600 cryptocurrencies now, roughly. Yeah. So some of them will just be considered as a currency. It's not going to fluctuate as much. Bitcoin has so many fluctuations. Some of the other ones, Litecoin, Ethereum, also fluctuate a lot. I think the hope is for something like this, it'll be a lot more stable, because that'll eliminate that need. And then, as Ben mentioned, because blockchain is decentralized, no one person is controlling it. And the other issue is that in Africa, so many people are unbanked. They don't have bank accounts. So with the A-coin, the premise is, if you have a mobile phone, it doesn't even have to be a smartphone. As long as you have a mobile device, you can make payments with A-coin. And at the moment, they're saying people buy prepaid minutes on their phones if they don't have a smartphone contract or whatever. You can even use your unpaid minutes or unused minutes and convert them into A-coin to make your purchases as you go along. So there's a lot of question marks there. One, it sounds good, but in practice, how many people actually do have phones? The prediction is that in 2025, I think the prediction was 50% of Africa as a continent will have phones. A lot of people don't have bank accounts, so this is meant to bridge that gap. But then the other question is, how easy is it to use? And if they are spending all this money to build all this crazy high-tech stuff, who is the target market? Is the average Senegalese person or whoever wants to move there going to actually be able to afford to live there? What is the cost of living in a place like that? And is it targeted at more of the elites?
Yeah, I mean, I think I also read about him, and he, interestingly enough, he was saying that he wants to build the city almost for, the way he put it, African Americans who are feeling isolated within the new America, to have another place to go and settle. They want to make it a place like that. The thing with any currency is that if it's locked off in a circle and the currency happens, and everything that you earn and spend is in the city and it's all the same currency, the fluctuation matters not to you because it was all bought and sold with that currency. The problem is, this is not the whole of Europe. It's not the whole of Africa. It is one little city where products will need to be sourced externally into there. So you're still having to convert your currency into dollars to buy things in. People are traveling, bringing currency in there. I think it's actually just another currency that they're creating. The bigger question is, why have it at all? Are we not moving to a place? Could this not be made into a cashless society and it's purely digital? Everything is digital.
That there is. I think that's what they're trying to do, though, and having.
So that's what they're trying to do, which is interesting, because on the BBC News today, they're talking about how certain cities in the UK are struggling because there aren't enough cash points. So what's happening is that the need for cash is diminishing. So where you used to have an ATM to withdraw cash, like 3 of them in a small little town, it's now there isn't one anywhere in your town. You have to drive to another town to get cash. And they're actually fighting to maintain a cash society. And they might be converting churches into banks because of the timing issue, but also having, at least having a pay point in a church because there's just no other pay points at all. Quite a weird juxtaposition where one is where we're losing cash completely and the other one is trying to save cash.
Yeah. I think the idea of building a city, I think that's a difficult thing to wrap around, and maybe they've thought it through more than we can here. But I think the idea of building a city almost from scratch is really interesting. I've often thought, why don't a handful of billionaires and millionaires get together and start building a little city of themselves? Because if you can start without the existing infrastructure and red tape, you can put in really cool sort of modular concepts where things can be adapted really easy. You can put in an underground city that makes maintenance super easy, or like interesting transport systems. You can try and think for the future, make a Tomorrowland kind of thing where it's like, well, it's not that much money and we can build a bunch of towers that'll get a bunch of people in for quite quickly. So I think that's really cool. And to your point, Zane, like, if it gets people into the city, it could be worth giving people a phone. If that gets them set up with a bank account and they start using it, then the value of, you can make a pretty cheap phone these days, if you don't need all the bells and whistles. They could probably give away a 50 quid smartphone, but put that as cost of acquisition into the system, and the lifetime value of that person then being in the system will be much more than that. So that could also be a part of it. And then you start going, well, that phone can also be their digital ID. So then they can use that to tap into buildings or to like access other laptops and stuff. There's a lot of potential in building something from scratch, I think. You could also look at having like devices that are neutral until you log in. So, cafes could just have laptops built into the table, and it's a set device until you tap and log in with your ID. And then your profile comes up. It'll all be on the cloud at that point. So then you just access your virtual machine via any laptop. You just log in with your ID, and every laptop has access to the cloud infrastructure. And then these people who don't have the money to afford the laptops and everything they need can all of a sudden have access to it. And then that creates opportunity for entrepreneurship and so forth in previously disadvantaged. So I think there's a lot you could do with building a city, basically.
Let's get Akon on here. We'll interview him, and you can.
I'll pop him a message.
You can pitch. Yeah. You pitch all those ideas to him. I think he'll be open to it. Just remember, you must do a Wakanda forever.
Yeah, Akon forever.
Yeah, turn it into an A. But then there's a few other issues with it. So when you delve into it, they've estimated it to cost $6 billion. There's only one named investor at the moment, and he's reportedly invested around contributed somehow 4 billion of that 6 billion. And when you kind of look into who he is, he's a Kenyan entrepreneur called Julius Mwali. Excuse my pronunciation. And apparently, so Business Insider, so the publication, they've described him as having a mysterious past and a history of being sued over allegations that he failed to repay debts. So is this a red flag? Is this common in that kind of area? Should we be worried?
I think it's probably common in most areas. If you look at there's some dodgy pasts, but I think if there's, you've got to trust your gut if you're in that kind of world, and if there's smoke, there's often fire. No, yes. So I don't know. That would worry me. Also, $6 billion doesn't seem like enough to build a whole city, though, does it?
I think it's one of those
people
things.
Are saying he's being ambitious.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it'll probably end up more, but I also wonder if it's one of those things where if you do have a clean slate, if it's almost easier, and if you're planning on like bulk building, if you can plan the projects back to back, whereas if you're individually building something, you can't order different amounts of concrete from different companies, and so. But if you're just bulk doing it, maybe there's some benefit in that as well.
Yeah, I mean, Dubai is quite if you think about it, Dubai was almost built in a similar way, right? Dubai had almost. If you look at the development of Dubai and you see the time lapse of the city development, it was pretty much just a desert, and now it's amazing kind of oasis where everything is kind of done properly. They also had the money to, if there was something standing in the way, you just knock it down, and you rebuild it somewhere else. I mean, they literally have been known to go, this shouldn't be here, let's knock it down, move it over there and build it again, just because it's gonna make the underground kind of move too far. We just want it to be a straight, efficient, train. So, I mean, that's a good, and that's probably why they're getting some of the architects and things to work, that's worked there, to work on this. I mean,
it'd be interesting to see if it works. I mean, I think in Africa generally, I read online that it's been a bit of a buzzword, smart cities, for a while. So apparently one was planned in South Africa near Johannesburg, but it was rejected. The proposals were rejected because they thought it wouldn't be affordable for anyone to actually live there. Then there's been discussions of a silicon savannah or something like that in Kenya. But again, they've not been able to get past all the red tape and the bureaucracy to get it going. But I guess the difference here is Akon's been discussing this with the Senegalese government for years. They've got the permission, they've got the land, he's got financial backing, he's got these architects in. So it'll be interesting. Could this be the breakthrough, or maybe it'll fall flat? It'll be a one to watch.
I was almost going to say with the toilet paper that investments become really interesting when they then get backed by very famous people, because they have an immediate audience. Even if you look at Ryan Reynolds' investment into a gin company that got bought quite quickly after he took over the marketing and became the face of it, also now owns a part of Mint Mobile, which in the US is a growing sort of mobile service provider. But then I wonder, on top of that point, as you said, Akon's fame with the people as well, he'll be very quickly able to get the people behind him. So if the government agrees and the people then are going to come, there's almost like a built-in audience ready to go, that will follow, and they'll follow the journey of the idea and so forth, and then people will be interested and they'll probably start investing as it kicks off and so forth. So you've got the value of the built-in audience with Akon's name behind it as well.
And I just want to tie in, because last week we spoke about philanthropy, and now we're talking about Senegal, so I'm going to tie the two together. Sadio Mane, the Liverpool striker, he's at the end of last year, he kind of he was walking into a match and they saw his cell phone was totally old and broken. I don't know if you read that piece.
Yeah,
but he's also Senegalese, and he gives away most of his money. I mean, he earns £150,000 a week, right? And so he could definitely afford a new phone. But he's just like, I don't want a new phone. And he's built stadiums, he's built schools. There's a village in Senegal where he pays everyone a couple of 75 euro a month. He gives everyone in that town, in that little village, just so that there's some kind of economy happening. So it's just amazing what fame can do used in the right way. And he's doing amazing things. Senegal seems to be quite a hot place right now. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's all good stuff, and I think that's the key. I think if you can use your riches and fame in the right way, there's a lot of people out there to help. So I think on that note, that kind of wraps us up for another great episode.
Perfect,
So we'll catch up again next week. Thanks,
Good.
guys.
Excellent.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much, and thanks everyone
Cheers.
for listening and watching. Yeah, see you next week. Bye, guys.